Okay, so we've had a good look at how we control inputs and how we get on with the job of mixing using the Vistonic screen over here to find all of the common features that we find on an analog console. So now let's have a look at the buses. A lot of people get a little bit confused about what buses are on a digital console, because generally on an analog console you've got a fixed structure, so you've got either 4 or 8 auxiliary sends, and then you may have 4 effect sends, and then perhaps 8 subgroups and a matrix section as well on the more complex analog consoles. So all we have on a digital console is, well, on the VI series we have 32 buses, and these can be configured to be auxiliary sends or groups or matrices depending on what your needs are. So you're not locked into a rigid structure of the console that can't be changed. You can configure the desk to work any way that you want it to work. So let's have a quick look at this. As I mentioned earlier in the overview section, these faders here control the outputs, and they have a number of pages that control blocks of 8. So what we're going to do is we're going to configure this desk to have on these first 8 over here auxiliaries, and you can see at the moment that the yellow faders tell me that they're all set as auxiliaries. So on fader banks A, B and C we've got 3 sets of 8 auxiliaries, giving us 24 auxiliaries. So imagine that that's just like a long strip of auxiliary master controls that you would find on a knob on an analog console. So all we're going to do is we're going to configure, well, we're going to leave the first row to be 8 auxiliaries. Then the second row over here I'm going to change to be 8 subgroups, and I'll show you how you can make those into mono or stereo subgroups. So let's go back to bank A. Now there's a very simple way to do this. Over here there's a button called All Buses. When I press the All Buses button, all that does is across all of the input faders, on the VI4 that's 24 faders, and on the VI6 it would be 32, I get all of my buses, starting with bus number 1 right the way through to bus number 24 or bus number 32 on the VI6. So this area of the Vistonic screen over here is now, at the bottom, is now taken over by a couple of switches which are put on these knobs over here that allow me to decide what this bus is going to be. So if we look over here, buses 1 to 8, which is this here, bus 1 to 8, they're all set to be auxiliaries. Now we're going to move over to this section here so you can get a good view of it. So I'm going to press bank B, so my 8 master faders now say aux 9 to aux 16, so that's my second block of 8 under the button labelled B. And on these faders over here, they appear over here. So I've got aux 9 to aux 16, which is just exactly the same. It's just those controls are mapped over here to make it easy for me. You can see if I switch the on and off buttons, we're doing the same here as we're doing over there. So this is just a mirror image of what's going on over there. So now if I go up to this knob over here, I've got an option of it being an aux, a group, or a matrix, and you'll see that the colour of the fader glow element changes as I'm doing that. So now it's an aux, it's yellow. When I go to a group, it's green, and when I go to matrix, it's blue. So I know that I want these to be group outputs, so I'm going to go through each one and just set it very simply to be a group. So now I have 8 group outputs across here. So these are all obviously mono groups at this stage. If we come down the screen a little bit, I've then got another knob here that allows me to decide whether this is going to be a mono or a stereo group. If I create stereo, you'll see the faders pairing up as we go. And now you see that I've lost these channels here because they've obviously been linked with the channel next to it. So now I've got a stereo group, and again you can see that what I do here is the same as what I'm doing here because they're the same controls. We're only in this mode for setting up groups or auxes. Okay, then I can remove the All Buses button and just go back to my standard mix position. So I've now selected input fader bank A, so this is back to being channel 1 to channel 24, so I'm now mixing my gig as normal, and these are back to being what we've just programmed.